we'll get started. Hello, everybody. I am super excited tonight to have you with us and experiencing one of OBA's wonderful webinars. Tonight we have Dr. Mark Merriwether, and we are going to start out a little bit with introduction with me and then our board members and about OBA, and then I'll lead you right into Mark's presentation. Again, my name is Vicki Velarde. I'm one of the directors of OBA, and I'm honored to be in the organic industry with my business, the NUMI Foundation. I'm always trying to adopt an organic lifestyle, and this is one organization that can help all of us to stay in line with what's trending, what's important, and what keeps us close to Mother Nature. The OBA organization is a community-based organization dedicated to individuals, gardeners, homeowners, landscapers, schools, and trust seekers on the real-world application and benefits of organics. Our community not only survives, but thrives. Here is our board of directors. We're comprised of 10 directors. We have varying experience, and we have created a mission together of moving organics to the forefront of priority in health, well-being, and taking care of Mother Earth. We have 3 co-founders, Bob Randall, Mike Sarant, and John Ferguson. Our sponsors are very, very important to the livelihood of OBA and support us when we're educating our community and members. I'm going to start out with our first sponsor, which is Plants for All Seasons. This is a full-service retail garden center that educates, delivers plants, and designs custom planters. They've been in business since 1973. They're located on State Highway 249. Take some time and go visit them. Our next newest sponsor is Allsbaugh's Ace Hardware of Woodlands. They have a great destination for organics with a highly knowledgeable staff and amazing customer service. Last year, they raised over $80,000 for the Texas Children's Hospital through the help of their customers. Thank you so much. Tally Landscape Architects is a full-service landscaper architecture firm. They're 20 years old. They plan, design, and have a construction management team. They do large-scale public projects such as park and recreation facilities, and their motto is regenerative design and development. Learn more about them through all these slides after. Tlepson Landscaping is providing pool design, drainage and planning, landscape lighting and architecture, irrigation and water feature design. Nature Way Resources comes from our very own John Ferguson. He's an expert on soil, mulch, and compost and operates a facility in Conroe, Texas. He is driven to educate people on the importance of staying in line with Mother Nature. Nature's Way provides a long line of products that enhance health, protects the earth, and teaches gardeners to use what is already provided naturally. The Rice Organization is a landscape design service for residential gardens. Laura Neff has been in business for 26 years and offers up-to-date latest trends on irrigation and gardening using her in-house maintenance crew and master gardeners. Microlife, our very own Mike Sarant and one of our co-founders of OBA. Him and his team are committed to healing the world and providing a brighter future for generations to come. He's been in business for 33 years, and all of his products have the highest nutrition possible. Their website is brilliantly designed to help you, the professional, the gardener, the farmer, the homeowner, and the retailer, choose from their product line to reach your goals. Learn more about the organic methods and get advice from the experts. This is my company, Anumi Foundation. We are located in LaGrange, Texas. We're a 55-acre nonprofit, and we're dedicated to growing vegetables for food banks. We cover 3 counties, Fayette County, Travis County, and Harris County. We have educational programs and are keenly open to volunteer help. Home Show Garden Pros. Danny Milliken, our executive director of the Garden Show, helps Texans discover the many benefits of gardening while teaching seasonal planting tips. He has incredible guest speakers. This happens every Saturday from 7 to 9 in the morning on Sports Radio 610. The Joyce Sarant Foundation. This is a 501c3 nonprofit organization that's dedicated to improving the lives of women, children, animals, and the environment. Joyce is Mike's mom, and she started Microlife with him from the very beginning. Finally, before we get started, I wanted to mention to you about the OBA Christmas parties. We're going to be featuring 3 different dates, November 30th, December 4th, and December 12th. At 3 different locations. We'll be advertising more about these Christmas parties, so stay tuned and keep notice on our website. Now, for Dr. Mark Merriwether Vordenbergen. He is the creator of Foraging Texas. He's the author of Idiot's Guide Foraging. He is the co-creator of the Wazoo Foraging Bandana. And we're gonna learn this evening about his wonderful plants and how you can create your very own medicinal landscaping and hidden pharmacy. Thank you, Mark, for being here tonight. It's such a pleasure.
Oh, always a pleasure to be here. All right, why don't I just jump right in? Host has disabled attendee screen sharing, so you need to give me permission here to share my screen. Otherwise, all this will be done in like interpretive dance.
Which would be fascinating, of course.
It would be, and it would.
You're now the host, so you should be able.
That.
You should be able to go ahead and share your screen now as host.
Okay.
If you go to your name,
it's yes, I give permission. Okay, it's making me quit and rejoin.
Oh gosh.
So
Wow.
All right. Well,
That is interesting. You don't see that very often.
yeah.
So
You gonna let me back in if I knock on the door?
Well, I think as host, you'll shut us all out. So I don't know what happened. Can you make me the host real quick? And let's see what happens. Go ahead. If you don't mind, Merriwether, making me the host.
Oh, let's see.
Sorry, we normally don't have these technical difficulties, but as you can see,
make you the host.
you go to my blue shirted picture and there's the 3 dots up there. You can kind of like click on that.
Mute, stop video. There we go. Okay.
Okay. Can you share now? Can you, if you try to share now, will you be able to do it?
Let me see.
Miriam is telling us there was a Zoom update last week and things have been wonky ever since. Thanks, Miriam, for the insight.
Still disabled.
Okay. Well, I definitely want to, I mean, I definitely want to hear your presentation. If you think that signing out and signing back in is worth it, I'll let you back in, I promise.
Okay, let me do that because I think trying to turn the camera to face my screen would just be now work.
Yeah,
Okay,
that would not be.
please stand by. Please.
Well,
That's not.
you guys are all welcome to play your own wait hold music. The rest of us will be silently waiting.
You need to let me share my screen. It's not even.
Well,
Let me try something here. Let me just click Zoom.
Well, again, sorry everybody for the technical difficulties. We're right on time, so no worries. We're losing a little bit of time. Yeah, for real, Lauren. It wouldn't be a good Zoom meeting without some technical difficulties. But we'll do it. We'll great. You know, I mean, the mess ups that happen in Zoom at least aren't as bad as the mess ups happening when you're foraging, you know, because those can be pretty serious. Oh, can't eat the oleander? All right, so the good doctor should be back very soon. Oh, here he is. I'm going to admit him if you guys want me to. Okay, he's in. And now try to get him to unmute.
Oops.
All right. You're back and you're host, so maybe you can share your screen.
All right, let's try this again.
Here we go.
Share
Drum roll, please.
And there was much rejoicing.
There it is. Yes.
Okay, you got it?
It is. If you don't mind making me the host, though, so I can still let people in and mute unruly guests.
Make host. Change host. Okay.
Awesome. Here we go. We're doing it.
There we go. All right. So thank you. Walking around in the woods is so much easier than standing behind the keyboard. Okay. So good evening and welcome to your yard pharmacy. How this is going to work. We'll give just a brief, I gave you, or you already got an introduction. I just want to throw a few more things in there. I also want to take about the sources of information as far as medical properties of plants, because as a scientist, it's important to me that people see the science behind things so they can have a certain level of trust. Tradition is great. There's 40,000 years of tradition, but it's still good to have science. And I'll quickly cover the different types of, well, the three simplest forms of medicinal concoctions you would normally be making with the plants. Then we'll look at the plants. And then if there is time, we will have a Q&A. All right, so just quick overview, Minnesota born, Masters in Medicinal Chemistry, PhD in Physical Organic Chemistry. As I mentioned, creator of the Forager in Texas, author of all sorts of stuff, multiple internet shows. If you want to see more of me after this, check out the Forager in Texas Facebook page every morning for the donut shop at the beginning of the world and Thursday evenings for Merriwether's World. Also mentioned the Idiot's Guide Foraging. I write a monthly article for Charm East Texas, a lifestyle magazine published here in Texas, and countless other journals and both science and otherwise. Weekends, I'm usually out reconnecting people to the land by teaching them the edible and medicinal plants around them. And also finally, my real job as a chemist is the medicine man for Medicine Man Plant Co., bringing ancient plants for modern issues. Okay, so like I said, I want to start out with the sources. The main places I go whenever I find a new plant or have a question about the potential medicinal properties of plants, first off is the National Library of Medicine, the PubMed.gov website, and the link is up here, very top one. If I circle it, hopefully I'm circling it. But yeah, that's a clearinghouse of pretty much every scientific paper that's ever been published. And so it's a really great place to go and look to see what science has been done on a particular plant. The easiest thing to do is put in the scientific name of the plant and then just see what comes up on it. Another great one is ResearchGate, www.researchgate.net. And this is very similar to the National Library of Medicine, but in this case, the science covers everything, non-medicinal and medicinal both, but it allows you to contact the scientists directly, the ones who wrote the journal article. So that's always useful. And then of course, WebMD, everyone's favorite place, especially anyone with any sorts of hypochondria or things like that. WebMD is a great thing to see if there are any interactions with these plants and potential prescription medications. That's always something important to keep in mind when you're dealing with plants as a medicinal source, because just like the lab-made stuff, the plants can have interactions with things you're already doing and taking. And then finally, the Amazon Foraging Texas store. There's a number of herbal books in there. The link, the Amazon/shop/foraging Texas, and that will give you a list of the herbal chemistry books that I like. Okay, racing through here. So we want to get a lot of plants in. The medical concoctions that you would be focusing on. So the first form and the easiest form is a tisane. A tisane is just a fancy way of saying tea. Technically, you can only call it a tea if it involves a Cincinnati plant. Anything else is a tisane. If you put some other plant in hot water, let it sit for a while, and then drink it, that is technically a tisane. The usual standard dose is 1 to 2 tablespoons per cup or 8 ounces of hot water. That's 1 to 2 tablespoons of the dried plant. For the tincture, if you are using fresh plants, you want 1 part freshly chopped up fresh plant, and then 1 part 190 proof alcohol. At that power alcohol, it will actually cause the plant cells to rupture and then release all the medicinal goodness from the cells into the alcohol. At the same time, the water in the plant is diluting the 190 proof down to somewhere around 90 to 100 proof alcohol. So still very well shelf stable for as long as you care to keep it around. If you are working with dried plants, because dried plants have lost most of their water and they are much more concentrated, up to 80% of their mass has been lost. In that case, you use 1 part plant and 5 parts alcohol. So a standard mixture would be 1 ounce plants and 5 ounce weight of alcohol, or 5 ounces weight of the dried plant in 1 quart of vodka. And then in the case of both types of tinctures, you want to let it sit around for 6 to 8 weeks, letting the molecules diffuse into the alcohol, shake it every day. Finally, a salve, and tonight's plants, the ones I picked, generally will not include a salve, but I thought I'd throw it out there. To make a salve, generally you take 100 grams of the dried plant material, put it in 500 milliliters of some sort of oil, like olive oil or safflower oil, something like that. Let that sit for a while. If you heat it up, usually what I like to do is heat it up to about 160, 170 degrees and let it soak like that for about 12 hours. At that point, the medicinal properties will have diffused out of the plant into the oil. You strain out the oil, and then you start mixing beeswax into it. Usually start with 1 ounce of beeswax and see where you are as far as the salveness of the salve. Okay, so, Michael, or sorry, Daniel, if anyone has any questions, if you can feed them to me, if you feel it is something the entire group would like to know, that would help. Okay,
Yes,
let's start.
absolutely. Oftentimes we're just waiting till the end to do all
Okay.
questions. So as people type them in, we'll just read them at the end unless they're very pressing.
Okay, sounds good. All right, let's start out with passion vine, the Passiflora incarnata. I find this to be, whoop, what happened? So I find this to be a very popular medicinal plant because it seems to deal with 2 of the major lifestyle illnesses of the day. So if you have a passion vine, the Passiflora incarnata, the flower made into a tea or a tincture, so soaked in hot water or soaked in alcohol, is a very potent anti-anxiety medication. What's fascinating about this from a chemical point of view is the main feel-good chemical in your brain is a chemical called serotonin. And it's found in a lot of cases of anxiety and depression. The serotonin levels are low in the brain. Usually the medical treatment is some sort of blocker of the enzyme that breaks down the serotonin and allows the serotonin to try and build up in the brain. And those work okay. The passion vine, the flower, is really interesting because it is loaded with the precursor or the signal molecule that tells the brain to make more serotonin. That molecule is known as GABA, gamma aminobutyric acid. And the weird thing about GABA is if you consume something with GABA in it, it cannot pass through what's called the blood-brain barrier. You have a particular barrier around the blood vessels in your brain that prevent all but just certain types of molecules to get in there. The brain is very protective about it, what it wants to interact with. The GABA is normally made in the brain, so consuming it doesn't seem to do anything. But in the case of the passion vine flower, the GABA concentrations and then the serotonin concentrations in the brain increase. The belief is there's some third or some other molecule in the passion flower that opens up that blood-brain barrier, allowing the GABA from the flower into the brain, thereby increasing the amount of serotonin, leading to a feeling good sort of feelings of feeling goodness. So very cool. What's also interesting about that is there's thought that maybe these chemicals can be used to unlock the blood-brain barrier to allow other therapeutic medicines through. But there's still a lot of research being done on that. Meanwhile, on the vine itself, the leaves and stem are a very potent sedative. So if you are having problems sleeping, again, 1 to 2 tablespoons of the dried passion vine leaf in a cup of hot water drank before bed is a very potent sedative. Keep in mind that in regards to sedatives, you don't want to take them every night. It's not that you become addicted to them, but your body will start to become dependent on it and see that as a kind of a Pavlovian response where it won't be able to sleep unless these compounds are flowing through your blood. So it's really best for any sleep aid to just use it when you absolutely need it, and otherwise try and change your lifestyle in some way to improve your sleep habits that way. So really cool plant, the passion vine. Like I said, it seems to be one of the most popular ones I discuss whenever talking about medicinal plants. It's also extremely easy to grow, and the only food for the Gulf Coast fiddiary butterfly. So very, very cool. Okay, now we're going to jump into a bunch of different trees. There is an old saying that there's an old saying that the best time to plant a tree is 20 years ago, and the second best time is right now. So if you are looking for plants to plant right now in your medicine garden, these next ones will probably be interesting to you because you want to get them in the ground. And now is actually a great time to be planting trees, at least in the hotter zones of the United States. I saw we have some guests from all over the country, though. It's pretty exciting. Okay, so the bottle brush tree, the Castamon species, there's a number of them around, but they all have these long red bottle brushy looking flower clusters on them. The leaves, if you've ever crushed them up, have a wonderful smell, kind of a minty, fragrant, spicy sort of smell going on. They make an excellent tisane. They also make a very flavorful tincture. The leaves, the compounds in the leaves are antibacterial, antifungal, and also very potent antioxidants. And let me just talk about antioxidants in a moment here, or let's talk about the antioxidants because that's really important for overall body health. You may have heard that antioxidants are important because they take care of the free radicals in your body. The easiest way to think of what a free radical is thinking of as you have little microscopic hand grenades floating through your body, just waiting to blow something up. The antioxidants seek these hand grenades out and throw themselves upon it and basically destroy the antioxidant, in the process sacrificing itself. but then preventing the free radicals from damaging other parts of your body. In particular, the free radicals, when they encounter DNA, can damage it in a way that causes mutations that can lead to cancers. So when you hear the term antioxidant, one of the ways you can think about it in your head is anti-cancer. Very useful. The other thing it does is antioxidants in general help reduce the concentration of the bad lipids in your blood by converting the high density lipids into lower density lipids, which then don't plate out and clog your blood vessels. So antioxidants, very important for your overall health. Okay, so the leaves can be used for internal bacterial infections or external. Same with the antifungal, internal, external, and then antioxidants is internal. The flowers, the tincture has been shown to be anti-tumor. If you think there are a number of cancers that form tumors, and after being surgically removed, a lot of time the patient is put on some sort of anti-tumor drug, just in case all of it wasn't removed. So they will have some sort of chemotherapy that they take for 6 years or so after the cancer to make sure nothing returns. And it turns out there are compounds that have that power in the flowers of the bottle brush. Now, that being said, I am not saying dump your chemotherapy meds and switch over to bottle brush. Think of some of this as more, if there's some sort of, say, pandemic that is ruining supply chains and making it difficult to get things, or you lose your job and you could no longer afford your medications, look around your neighborhood for the bottle brush tree and see if the owner will share some with you. Okay. Next up, the chaste tree, the vitex, also known sometimes as the butterfly tree, sometimes known as monk's pepper. This is a really interesting tree from the point of the seeds. So the seeds, the dried seeds, and we're just starting to enter this seed season now for the chaste tree. Basically what it does is it affects the levels of the progesterone, one of the main female hormones in the female body. And so some of its effects include soothing the symptoms of premenstrual syndrome. It's been shown to reduce the menopause hot flashes and mood swings. From all ages, it helps reduce the chance of uterine fibroids, very important. Warning for the men out there, the males, that extended use of it can lead to a slowly building impotence. So as the levels of progesterone go up, some of the male secondary sexual activity drops down some. So it's kind of important to keep that in mind. The flavor is actually really good. It often was used as a pepper substitute. In fact, the name monk's pepper came from the fact that they used it to help suppress the libido in the monks, to keep them on their holy vows a little easier. But the seeds, powdered, just sprinkled on your food or made into a tincture, is very good at kind of adjusting the female hormonal system into what is considered a normal range. Now, that being said, there's always a bell curve, and you may still be falling, on one side or the other, but it has a long history of use for these features. And also scientists backs up that it actually can be used for this. So pretty exciting there. All right, desert willow. This is a native West Texas plant, but it is also used a lot in landscaping. I see quite a few of them around the Houston area. As you drive over to Buchanan's down the road there, one of the sponsors, there's a beautiful desert willow down the street some from it. So the flowers of the desert willow are a very good cough suppressant. And what's nice about the desert willow is it flowers for a long time. So you can take the flowers and use them fresh off the tree, or you can allow them to dry and still use them that way. So as a cough suppressant, especially now, if you cough and everyone just kind of stares at you with the hairy eyeballs, and you might want to suppress that cough some. So the flowers of the desert willow. I should also point out that being a desert plant, it is a low water plant. So great for xeriscaping and other sort of landscaping where you are trying to really reduce your water bills. The tree itself is kind of a willowy look to it. It's not a big tree, so you can put it on a fairly small piece of property. The bark is both antimicrobial and antifungal. So again, it can be used internally or externally. So antimicrobial, think antibacterial. It really does not have any effects, at least scientifically proven effects, on viruses. So it is strictly for bacterial infections, but then also fungal infections. So it's a good tree there. Okay, a very, very popular fruit tree, at least around the Houston area, is the loquat. And this is a wintertime fruit. The fruit are absolutely delicious. Sometimes you hear it be called a Chinese plum, but also really, really, really good. And this is a good time to plant it. The leaves, dried leaves, made into either a tisane or a tincture, anti-cancer. This has a long history of Asia of being used as an anti-cancer medication, both in general, just like as a daily tonic to help reduce the chance of cancer, or if someone came down with cancer, it would be used to help as part of the treatment for that cancer. The dried leaves also are anti-inflammatory, so especially good with sort of joint pains and things of that nature, where you just have some sort of inflammation. The tea from this, it has kind of a, if you've ever had ginseng tea, it has kind of that herbaceous, woody flavor once the leaves are dried and made into a tea, but they are very good for many different types of inflammation. Cough suppressant. Again, just to help soothe your throat and reduce the irritation and inflammation of the throat. So to reduce the coughing there. Is a decongestant, so it help break up the mucus and the slime and help you get rid of the gunk in your head if you do happen to get a viral infection, a cold or a flu. But what's really neat about the loquat is it does have antiviral properties, though so far, for whatever reason, they only seem to, or it only seems to work with viruses of the lungs, viruses that are getting into the lungs. So most likely it is something to do with the sort of cells that will accept the particular medicinal compounds into them. So in this case, the loquat, it seems to go into the lungs. It does not seem to help viral infections in the sinuses, the throat, or other places. But definitely right now, the coronavirus, one of the entry points is through the lungs, so it can help there. I need water here. I want to stop for a second and talk about the proper way of drying, in particular the leaves, drying the leaves for the, if you're going to make a tea. Now remember, plants have a cell wall. It is a hard, rigid structure that keeps everything inside the cell inside and everything outside the cell outside. So if you just take the green leaves and drop them in hot water, you're not going to get anything. If what you want to do is you want to just let the leaves age naturally for about 2 to 3 weeks. Just hang them up somewhere in your house, someplace cool, dry, out of the sunlight, ideally with some moving air just to keep them well ventilated and reduce some moisture buildup. But plants have an enzyme in them that when the plant realizes it's died, it triggers that enzyme as the last thing it does. And then the purpose of that enzyme is to start breaking holes through that cell wall so all the nutrients in the plant can then return to the soil for the plant's babies and the other plants around it. So to open up the cell walls, to put holes through the cell wall, it's best just to let the leaves dry for about 2 weeks. During that time, the enzymes will chew holes through the cell walls. This will allow the water to evaporate quickly. Once the water has evaporated, then that enzyme action stops, and you basically have plant jerky, and all the cells are riddled with holes. So when you put the leaves, the dried leaves, in water or alcohol, now you have escape routes for the medicinal compounds. Otherwise, you would not. So it's always important to allow them to air dry. People have asked, well, can I put the leaves in a dehydrator or the oven for a while? I recommend against that. It does force the water out of the leaves, but it doesn't give the enzyme time to chew holes through the cell wall. So you're still not going to get all the medicinal compounds out of the leaves that you would normally get if you allowed them to just air dry for about 2 weeks, 2 to 3 weeks. Okay, jumping further on the loquat, the seeds, again, making a tisane, you know, a tea out of it, or the tincture, soaking the seeds in alcohol. The seeds are an anti-inflammatory, again, so if it's like an inflamed sore throat, it'll help there. Inflamed joints from different types of arthritis or other sorts of inflammations, the loquat seeds will help with that. Very interesting is it's shown that the seeds, there's some compounds in there that help protect healthy cells from the damage done by chemotherapy drugs. So if you know about chemotherapy, usually chemotherapy drugs are just strong poisons who are trying to poison the cancer cells before they poison the healthy cells. So, you know, both healthy cells and cancer cells are being damaged by the chemotherapy drugs, but there's a compound in the loquat seeds that has been shown to help reduce that damage to the healthy cells without protecting the cancer cells. So that's really awesome. Warning, the seeds of the loquat, they do contain trace amounts of cyanide. So it's best to kind of chop them up into small pieces, think like coffee ground size, maybe a little bigger, and allow them to air dry for a while. And that will cause a lot of this, the trace amounts of cyanide to be lost or be, removed from the seeds, at which point then they become safe for use. Magnolia. I love magnolias. So a little side note, magnolias have been around for the time of the dinosaurs. At one point, the magnolia tree or members of the magnolia tree family were the dominant tree all around the planet Earth. Now, millions and millions and millions of years later, they're kind of localized across the South, but at one time they covered the world. So again, with the seeds have been shown to be anti-tumor. So again, they are used to prevent initial formation of the tumors, or more often after someone has had a cancerous tumor removed, included in the protection, the daily dose to prevent tumors from coming back. They are anti-inflammatory. So again, helping with any sort of inflamed joints or other inflamed body parts that may be causing pain or other issues. So good there. Antibacterial, internal and external. So they will help kill bacterial infections. They do not help against viral infections. So bacteria only, they do not help against viruses. Anti-seizure. Another way to think of this, rather than grand mal type seizures or the brain seizures, it's more, think of it as a muscle relaxant. Cramps and muscles and chronic muscle pain, where the muscles are just tightening up into hard balls. The seeds have been shown to help with that. So think chronic muscle pain, especially cramp style type pain. And then finally, the seeds in the tincture form are a sedative, so they are going to make you sleepy. So that's something to keep in mind as to what time of day you might want to be trying them out. Because, like anything else, you don't want to be working heavy machinery, especially if you have a sedative already, soaked in alcohol. So something to keep in mind there. Okay, the leaf of the magnolia, again, a tea or the tincture, it's anti-cancer. So it, again, has a long history of being used to help fight a number of different types of cancers. And science has shown that, yes, it actually does have anti-cancer properties. Pretty awesome. And then, like the seeds, antibacterial. So you can take it orally, take it internally to fight different sorts of things like salmonella, E. coli, food poisoning. In Boy Scouts, we used to call it beaver fever if you drank some bad water and had the protozoa and the giardia and all that stuff in there. So any sort of bacteria infection, but again, it does not help against a virus. Okay, a common plant around here, especially in the Houston area, but all across the Gulf Coast region, is the native southern waxed myrtle. A wonderful smelling plant. I will tell you right now, it is also, not only does it have some medicinal properties, but it is an awesome seasoning when the leaves are dried, and like make a southern wax myrtle lasagna, where you use the dried leaves to replace the Italian seasoning. So the root bark, and so this actually involves digging up some of these southern wax myrtles. So it's best to plant a succession of them, knowing some will be sacrificed as they mature and be used to gather the root bark. But the a tisane, or a tea made from the root bark, it helps soothe the intestinal tract if it's inflamed or otherwise irritated. So, the whole length from the throat out the other end, very good there. Also the urinary tract. So it helps, especially with kidney stones or a kidney infection. It doesn't fight it so much, but it will help reduce the pain some. Now, in the case of the kidney stones, I will say it will help reduce the pain some. It is not going to make the pain go away, but will reduce it down some. So hopefully you can get to a doctor and get some stronger medicines prescribed for the kidney stones. But if you can't, or if the doctor isn't available at the time, the tea made from the dried leaves of the southern wax myrtle will help some. And then it also helps, like I said, pretty much with the different inflamed tissues, with the sore throat, especially if you gargle with it and swish. But you can swallow it. It tastes pretty good. So you can use it for, like I said, any of the inflamed gastrointestinal or urinary tract type issues. Okay, we're actually going through this pretty quickly. Normally I'm used to questions popping up, but hopefully there are a lot of good questions at the end there. So Oregon grape. This is another common landscaping plant used, I see all over the place in Texas. It is not native specifically to the Texas. It's up from the Pacific Northwest, but it has a number of good uses. So the wood, not the bark, but the inner wood. If you've ever cut apart or pruned an Oregon grape, you may have noticed that the wood is a bright yellow color. And this yellow color is due to a chemical called berberine, which is a very potent antimicrobial, antiviral. So it can be taken internal and external. Well, I guess I don't know why you would put it externally for a virus, but antiviral, kind of useful right now. And then antidiarrheal too. Keep in mind when you're doing antidiarrheal, you're going to need a lot of it, because you're pumping out a lot of water when you have diarrhea, and so you do need to replace that. So a wood, the yellow wood made into a tea or a tincture. Now, when I started this presentation, I mentioned that the standard dose for most of these was 1 to 2 tablespoons in 8 ounces of water. In the case of the Oregon grape, we want to drop that back some. I would recommend starting with like half a teaspoon and just let it soak for 5 or 10 minutes. The tea is going to turn a kind of a gold yellow sort of color. It is going to be very bitter. You do want to be careful how much you can take, because in large quantities, the berberine, I recommend looking it up on WebMD, I gave the link at the beginning, can cause some issues in some people with the liver. So think of this as kind of a last ditch sort of thing if you can't afford the antivirals, or joke, when the zombies come, or when we reach the Venezuela state of civilization, when the medicines are hard to come by, the Oregon grape is really good for these sort of things, the antimicrobial, antiviral, and antidiarrheal. I also want to point out the Texas native agarita, also known as algarita, but the agarita, the hill country bush, is in the same family and has the same compound. So those of you up in the hill country, go with the agarita instead of the Oregon grape, and you'll have much better luck just growing it in general. The rest of the place, basically in the East Texas and Gulf Coast, go ahead and use the Oregon grape, Mahonia. Mahonia. If you're in the hill country, West Texas, those areas, go with the agarita. Okay, sweet gum. Now, I'm probably one of the few people that love sweet gum. Most people that have sweet gum, you like the sweet gum? Okay, all right, good. Most people don't like the sweet gum. It is, these pointy balls on it are a pain to step on. They're a pain to mow over when they go shooting out of the mower, breaking windows and stuff like that. But the tree itself has some really cool medicinal properties. So the leaves are an antibiotic. They have a long, long history of being used by the Native Americans to deal with wounds, to prevent infections in wounds. So it would be either used as a tea or tisane internally. And a poultice is where you mash up, usually you will like chew up the leaves to make a pulp out of it and pack a wound with that to prevent infections in a surface wound, and then change it out, several times during the day. The seeds, if you break open this seed pod and get the small seeds, they look like small sunflower seeds. They work kind of like cloves to help settle indigestion. But basically what they do is they trigger the release of more stomach acid, which then helps digest the food and breaks it down more quickly. And so it just helps with the overall feeling of, I ate too much sort of thing. So the leaves, antibiotic, the seeds helps with indigestion. But what you're really after is the sap, the resin from the sweet gum. So this has all sorts of medicinal properties that science has confirmed. The way to get this sap is you make a series of V-shaped cuts in the sweet gum tree. The sap oozes out, collects, dries, you scrape it out, and then you use it to make a tea or a tincture out of it. So as you can see from this list here, it is antimicrobial, so it can be used internally and externally to fight bacterial infections. It is antiviral. So it has properties there to help fight viral infections. The main understanding is it helps with so when a virus gets into a cell, it then hijacks the cellular machinery to make new viruses. And so the sweet gum, there are compounds in the sap, the resin, that screw up the virus's ability to hijack the cellular machinery. Anti-cancer, again, probably similar in that it kind of defends the DNA and keeps the DNA doing what the DNA is supposed to do rather than what some evil force wants it to do. Antifungal, external, internal. Not so good with like foot fungus or like fingernail fungus because it can't really get there, but other general body funk type things, really good. Anti-inflammatory. So again, any sort of inflammations, especially throat, stomach, anything like that, joints, anywhere where tissues are inflamed and just not feeling good, it's been shown to help with that. A cough suppressant. So again, it helps soothe the throat, reduce the irritation and inflammation in the throat, and helps suppress the coughs that way. Antihypertensive. So it actually helps lower blood pressure, which is really important because there's what, like 80% of the Americans nowadays have elevated blood pressure, and there's a whole bunch of things to try and get people to be more healthy to reduce their blood pressure. So something to keep in mind there. So it is a blood anticoagulant. So it helps thin the blood and reduces the formation of platelets. So that's something to keep in mind. If you are already on blood thinners, you probably don't want to be taking the sweet gum sap or resin because it can work in conjunction with the blood thinners and reduce it even lower to the point where you will become, you will bruise very easily. Or if you are cut, it could potentially be difficult to stop the bleeding. So, keep that in mind. But the sap also, along those lines, if you are cut, it has been shown to stimulate wound healing, to speed up the healing of wounds. So the basic science there is the belief that there is a compound in the sweet gum, the resin, the sap, that mimics the hormone signal that tells your cells, okay, you're healing, heal faster. So it like increases the amount of this healing signal. And so the cells respond by putting more effort and more speed into the healing. And then finally, it's been shown to help with damaged livers, assuming whatever damaged the liver is no longer present in the body or no longer part of the person's lifestyle. It's shown that the sweet gum sap, the sweet gum resin, can help stimulate the liver's own repair features and help rebuild damaged liver. Really, really cool that way. So the sweet gum, for a hated tree, has a lot of interesting powers. Oops. Okay. Next one, the mimosa. A lot of people don't like this because it is a strong allergy causer. It's not exactly native, but it is a really interesting tree. It always reminds me of a Dr. Seuss sort of tree. If Dr. Seuss, actually talked to God and said, hey, let's make a tree, this is the tree they would make. And there's more to it than that. So it's been shown that a combination of the leaf, the bark, and the flower together, equal amounts of leaf, bark, and flower, and ideally the bark is from older branches and more mature parts of the tree. That's where the highest concentration of the particular medicinal compounds you want are located. But the tisane or a tincture involving the three, first off, it's a very potent anti-anxiety combination. So if you're easily freaked out and stressed out, the mimosa, the combination of the leaf, bark, and flower will help reduce anxiety levels. It is a general adaptogen. When they talk about adaptogens, basically what that means is it helps flush the body of the chemicals that occur from stress. So when you're stressed out, the body makes certain chemicals that for short periods of time, these chemicals help the body deal with the stress. But if you're stressed out for long periods of time, these particular compounds build up and start damaging the body. And so the combination of the leaf, the bark, and the flower, again, has been shown scientifically to help flush the body of these compounds. And so, even as you're under stress, it helps reduce the buildup, like cortisol and some of the others so you don't get the long-term damage from these compounds. And then just promoting an overall feeling of well-being, so generally increasing the serotonin levels in the brain. The science behind that hasn't quite been figured out, other than, yes, it seems to do that. We just don't know why. Sleep aid, so it will help you by relaxing you, de-stressing you, helping flush the stress chemicals. One of those stress chemicals is adrenaline. So by reducing, you can't sleep when you're filled with adrenaline. So by helping flush out the adrenaline, it allows you to sleep better. And then usually you want to collect the leaf, the flower, and the old bark in the springtime. That's when the flowers appear. Now you're probably wondering, well, what happens if I leave out one of these? If I just do leaf and flower, or bark and leaf, or leaf and bark? Well, the end results that's been shown with that is kind of just the opposite. Feelings of unease, very vivid dreams bordering on nightmares, or if you're already susceptible to nightmares, it can lead to increased nightmares. So there's something about the three combined that work well, but if you just go with two, it almost has a reverse effect. There's some synergy that all three components of the plant are needed to bring about the effects. So kind of weird that way. And science is still looking into just trying to figure this out, but they haven't figured that out yet. So for now, the leaf, the bark, and the flower, equal amounts of each, give the best results. Okay, we got a few minutes here. Do we want to jump to the question and answer, or?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, let's do it. We'll just, I kind of have us tracked back to the questions. Again, if you have any other questions, feel free to go to Mark's many sources of information. So you do such a good job of getting the information out there, Merriwether, and really appreciate that. Just going to start with a, wow, that was awesome comment. So thanks so much. I should be able to track back kind of where these were landing. I see now why it's nice to do the questions during the presentation. But anyway, we're on passion vine is our first question.
Okay.
A lot of people are kind of like, wow, I've seen these a lot. Didn't realize what they were. But the question is, are all passion vine edible or medicinal in this sense?
Okay, yes. There's like 4 or 5 different passion vines native to Texas. All of them have varying levels of these powers. The dwarf passion vine, the one that produces the little fruit, I don't know if you can see me or not. I'm holding up my fingers. A little fruit,
our settings.
And little flowers. Those have the lowest concentration. If possible, you want to go with the Passiflora incarnata. That has the highest concentration, and that's the one most of the studies have been done with. There's the fetid passion vine, the one that stinks with the red fruit. That one has been shown to have some of the powers. There is the purple one, the deep purple one with the 5-lobed flowers. That also has effects, but if possible, you want to try and get the Passiflora incarnata.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. I think that was the question. So this is the same one that makes the delicious fruit.
Mm-hmm.
So that is another benefit. Okay, so a lot of people asked, will there be a copy of this video? Our trend is generally just to post the video after it's edited onto our website, obaonline.org. Some of the videos we'll cut up and make shorter clips of. So, but yeah, it'll be available. So I know that's not a question for you.
But send me a link so I can share it with everyone.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. Yeah, I'll just chunk it down here. And then Jenny asks, can the bottle brush help with cancer, also help with cysts? So that sounds like maybe some of your anti-tumor questions.
Yeah, cysts. So cysts have a different biological cause. And so I never saw any research on it for using it against cysts. I would be hesitant in that regard.
Okay. Well, that's good enough for me. We have a lot of questions, so that's okay. Just another question from Jenny. Is there any particular time of year that these are best harvested to make the tisanes, tinctures, etc.? So the bottle brush are the brown leaves toward fall, winter, just as medicinal as the fresh green leaves.
So if you think about a leaf as a chemical factory, when it is young, it's making all these compounds because all the machinery is working really well. But then as the leaves age, some of that machinery breaks down, and then the plant has to decide, well, the machinery that works, what am I going to use that to make? And usually then it focuses on making more leaves or more plant. So it's best to get the younger, healthier leaves to get the most, have the highest amount of the medicinal compounds rather than the older leaves.
Okay, that makes a ton of sense. Thank you. Miriam asks about the loquats here. Can you make it to sane with the leaf and the seeds together, or should they be done separately?
No, it's absolutely fine to mix the two together. It's a very common process. A lot of the medicinal teas and so forth are a number of plants, each working on different aspects of the symptoms and the body to have an overall effect. So yeah, you can mix and match and put things together. That's fine.
And then, okay, awesome. This one is, I think it's for loquat too, but maybe we can address it for magnolia also. We have how long should seeds air dry, but do we grind them? And then is what kind of grinder is good to use to grind them?
Okay, so both the magnolia and the loquat seeds are fairly soft seeds, all things considered. So just a blender or a food processor with a chopping blade. Like I said, the goal is to get them the size of coffee grounds or higher. So really even a coffee grinder would probably work, but you might have to pre-chop it some. But the goal is coffee ground size. So if nothing else, a coffee grinder.
Okay, that's a piece of cake. I got so many coffee grinders, so I'm good to go. So let's see who asked that. Lauren is wondering if any of the plants mentioned this evening have dangerous lookalikes, and if we have time. So any lookalikes that we should look out for? I mean,
no, not really. It's all a matter of paying attention to detail,
Yeah.
And especially if you're going to go to one of the nurseries or something and buy it. But I used to think there are certain plants that no one could mistake, and then I met people that could mistake them. So it's paying attention to detail, use reference guides. I tell people, if you are trying to identify a plant, you want to match at least 5 structural features on the plant with whatever resource guide you're using to try and identify the plant. A prime example is elderberry has small purple berries that grow in these big clusters. The leaves have these compound leaves. The bark is gray. There's a bunch of different structural features there. And then so often people mistake pokeweed for elderberry. Pokeweed has a red stem. Its berries grow on a single stalk. It has simple leaves. Everything about the plants are different except the color of the berries. So, but so many people get them mixed up because they just see purple berry, that must be elderberry. So try and match at least 5 structural features. In the case of tonight's presentation, there really shouldn't be any mimics. I say that as a person who knows plants, as a gardener.
But only if there was excellent, easy to access foraging book that's already been shown once during this presentation that we could, access.
Well,
I will say, some easy guide. Oh my gosh, there's one.
The Idiot's Guide Foraging, it does not include the medicinal properties. The publisher did not want that. But www.foragingtexas.com, with its 225 plants right now, does include the medicinal properties of the different plants. So
okay, that's awesome. And I appreciate that you chose plants that didn't have a mimic on here. That is helpful. So, all right, back to the questions. Jenny has an odd question. She wonders if you can make a sweet syrup from the sweet gum sap.
Probably not. The sap itself isn't all that sweet. Actually, I guess if you went with the sugar and water, you could sweeten it. My concern with syrups is they are not very shelf stable. Because you have sugar and water, a lot of things like to grow in them. And so even in, refrigeration, they can run into problems. So if you were going to do that, it would be best just to have the dried sap and just make like a small bottle of syrup like once a week to have your week's worth of syrup, because by the end of the week, you're going to have to throw it out. So,
Gotcha. Yeah. Petri dish sort of action.
yeah.
Awesome. Okay, so Tiffany's question is, when it comes to the mimosa plant, we have the 3 different elements that go together. How do you estimate how much go in each one? Is it just equal parts?
Equal parts. So try and pack it down. If you want, you can go by weight, 1 ounce, 1 ounce, 1 ounce. That's probably the most accurate. So,
Okay, wonderful.
yeah.
Lot of great, anything on, let's say we got a couple of tinctures that are anti-inflammatory and, things like that. Are there any dangers with combining tisanes in that front? Things like that.
Okay. For anti-inflammatory, usually not. In that case, it would be best again to go to WebMD. I'm more concerned about interactions with the medications that people may be taking rather than the other plants. But yeah, if the tulip plants do have the same power, depending on the power, I would reduce it down some. So instead of doing 2 tablespoons, be 1 tablespoon of each and combining them that way, just to be on the safe side.
Okay. Well, thank you. That's a bunch of great information. Our last question here from the chat is from Magdalena. And she's asking, on the plants you've covered, how's their shelf life? Can we dry them and then save them in labeled containers for use later on?
Yeah, so the basic rule of thumb with dried plants, once they're properly dried, like air dried and so forth, they're good for about a year. So if you think, from the time you collect it to the time that particular plant is available again, beyond a year, they have a tendency to break down some and are no longer as good. If you make the tincture out of it, the tinctures are pretty much considered to have almost an immortal lifespan.
Nice.
At that point, everything's just preserved and sitting there, not changing. So it's all good there. If you make a big jar of tincture, and as you use it up, it is best to transfer it to smaller jars and smaller jars, just to reduce the amount of oxygen that the material comes in contact with, because oxygen is usually your biggest enemy for that. In fact, that's why if you have a large jar, it's best to transfer your daily use into a smaller jar and just use that, and then just open the big jar as needed to refill, every so often.
That's great. Yeah, kind of go for the small jar. It sounds like the tinctures are really the way to go if you're looking for a longer storage device. I mean, on teas, are we having to dry almost everything we're making into a tea, or do green teas work? You know what I mean? Green tea, they're going to find me for that comment. Are the, fresh plant tisanes better?
Yeah. I am a huge proponent of letting them dry naturally so you get those holes for the cell wall. If you are going to work with just a green tea, a fresh plant, what you have to do then is chop it up really fine, smash it. You need to mechanically rupture those cell walls. And one of the side effects of that is you release a lot of the chlorophyll. Chlorophyll does have some health benefits, but it also tastes bad. And so if the tea is already, some of these are kind of on the bitter side and so forth, the chlorophyll just makes them taste that much worse. So you can avoid that problem if possible, if your housemates or whoever will allow you to turn your house into a witch's workshop with plants drying all over the place, and go that way.
It sounds like that the fresh tisane is sort of just, you might as well just eat them.
Yeah.
Just shove them in your mouth and chew them.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, thanks so much. It sounds like we got almost all our questions answered. I mean, there's a question here about, using them as rub, but that's similar as using them in a salve, which
Yeah, so,
salve,
yeah.
which you opened with that. So
Yep.
Jenny, I invite you to kind of revisit the video when we get it posted on our website. I got kind of our information for OBA up there. We have a really fun traveling Christmas party. We don't want to do a big group Christmas party, so we're doing multiple small group Christmas parties, and that'll be, or not Christmas parties, sorry, 12 days of giving, fun times holiday event. So we're all very excited about that, and so stay tuned for OBA. Big thanks to Merriwether here for popping in and giving just great information.
My pleasure.
And we're going to get you worked in next year on doing something and try to get you live in front of everybody.
Cool.
So I know you do, you like doing foraging walks from time to time.
Just about every weekend, yeah. So if you go to the Foraging Texas website, there's a list of upcoming classes. There's a bunch between now and February. So, yeah.
Well,
I'll
awesome.
probably do
Thanks so
too many
much.
of those.
Really appreciate the time and all of the great
Thanks for having
information.
me.
So big thanks to all of our sponsors. Couldn't do it without you. And everybody, we are going to be signing off. So thanks a ton.
All right. Have a great evening.
You too.
Look what's happening.